this is for the one who ain't never had a love, yeah. This one's for the girl who don't feel like she's enough, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This one's for the cool kid playing on the school team, crying to himself cause he never had the prom queen. Head full of wants, but they said it's just a pipe dream, yeah. This one's for the kids like me, they ain't never had one day. The ladies always turn their cheek, but they ain't let the fat ones sing. This one's for the kids like me, kept working when they had nothing. When people try to take their dreams, they stuck it to them, please don't change. For the nerd.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How's everybody doing out there on this Wednesday, May 7th, 2025, episode number 164? How's everybody doing out there? As always, Dave's not with me this week. He'll be back with us next week, so this is his off week, but it's just me. I'm here. Wherever you are watching from, whether it's X, YouTube, Facebook, Kick, Rumble, hello. We appreciate you all. Make sure you like, share, follow, subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating if you're listening to this via podcast form later. We appreciate it all. And go follow us wherever you can find social media at the Alex Cuesta Show. We are there on all of them. So before we jump into the fun stuff, last week we had on Christian Toto. He's a award-winning film critic and the host of Hollywood and Toto podcast. And we continued our fun rundown, talking to a lot of different, gaming people and movies people. And Christian was lots of fun to talk to. Gave us a good rundown about all the movie stuff and how he got into being a film critic and things like that. So it was a great show. Go back, give that a watch, give it a listen, however you prefer. But this week, I'm excited for it. And I'm excited for all of our guests, right? I say it every week. But this week, me being a political junkie, this one is going to be lots of fun because when you enjoy politics, especially when it gets down to crunch time, when it's really like campaign season, your whole world is determined by polls. And on today's episode, we're actually going to be able to have the main pollster from one of the biggest and most important polls in the country. I'm pumped to bring him on. Let's bring him in right now. He is Mark Mitchell. He is the head pollster for Rasmussen Reports. What's going on, Mark?
Hey, good to be here. Not much. This is normally when I stream, but I just took our main account and blasted it out. So maybe we'll get some of the people that we normally get Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9.
Oh, I appreciate that you gave up your streaming time for me. That is, I'm eternally grateful for that. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah, no, good stuff. Yeah, we got a guest tomorrow. We're going to talk about the destruction of Canada. And, a lot going on, though. Definitely a lot going on.
I refuse to call it Canada. They've been Canada forever just because it sounds so much better. Like Canada's so abrupt, like Canada just flows out. They're already Canadian, so just Canada. Like I think they need to have a referendum to just officially change the name.
Sounds like a Warhammer faction or something.
Well, I mean, if it was a old school Warhammer faction that was only males, it would then be also infiltrated by females now, because that's the thing with Warhammer. That's the lore. It's always been that way, guys. So. Yeah. I want to jump into the fun stuff because, Rasmussen is easily one of the biggest polls in the world and one of the most important. Whenever anything remotely political jumps on, you guys are right up there with all of the big polls and mentioned and stuff like that. So first things first, let's get a little nerdy. How the hell does it work? Polling is so shady. We hear about it, this and that. How do you guys go about, number one, what polls do you decide when you want to do them? How do you decide the polls? And number two, how do you go about getting people? Because I think we've all gotten those phone calls and you always get the warning. If you answer once, they're going to call you every time, right? So it's a lot of people just don't answer. So how do you go about getting this type of stuff done?
Well, it's getting tougher for sure. And everything's fragmenting. And a lot of people say, well, I've never been polled. If you haven't already, you're probably never going to be, is ultimately what it comes down to, because pollsters are reaching fewer and fewer people. And a lot of people use that as an excuse to say, well, this is why we're continuously wrong over and over again.
Yeah.
But if you play with data, you know that like data can be useful. And if you have a continuous stream of it and you're not playing around with the methodology, you can calibrate it by using weighting or by using more of this type of data than that type of data. And what they do is that cycle after cycle, they just miss and they don't calibrate. Well, that's because they're not trying to be accurate. They're trying to run cover for the shill for the establishment.
Yeah.
But yeah, we started, most of the polling used to be done with people walking around a neighborhood, knocking on a door.
Yeah.
Then it became live operator, and that dominated the industry. But the problem with live operator is when you start to talk about, conservatism started to be an ugly word 30, 40, 50 years ago. People
Yeah.
wouldn't want to open up to the live operator. And so Rasmussen came onto the picture early 2000s, and I don't think we were the only ones, but we used landline robo-dialing, anonymized, just randomly dialing landlines. That worked pretty well. Problem is, landlines are going away. And so we've ventured into an online panels, which a lot of people use. And the data is not great, but we still reach hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people through that. And 45% of our polling is still, like, we have 400,000 people on landlines that will answer.
That's incredible.
If we
Actually,
call them, they will
that's
answer.
surprised.
And
I'm surprised that there's still 400,000 landlines in use. I'm not gonna lie.
90 million
Wow,
landlines are
really?
still out there. A lot of them are business, but there's still, I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
40, 50, 60 million people who have
true.
landlines. Now they're almost all over 50, but so is half the electorate. So it works out. And I like those people better because when the online, the big problem that I have that I think we've done fine overcoming is that your average person answering an online panel is doing it in their pajamas, trying to earn 30 cents and barely reading the poll. And then cell phone live operators pretty expensive,
Yeah,
and the SMS blasting texts out to people is expensive. And at a certain point, it's like, well, you're getting, what you're discovering isn't really a sample of America. It's a sample of people who answer scammers.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I love the
It's
landline people because they're giving me my time. They want to, it's
yeah,
kind of like a voter. You got to get off the couch and go down and vote. And those people have to get off the couch and take my survey. So it works out pretty well. But again, it's not some rocket science. Like, we could program a poll right now and just like run it. It's not hard. Anybody watching this could run a poll right now. Just go to like Survey Monkey, buy some data. They'll connect you to people that take. And what it comes down to is, like, mostly it's your brand and your reputation. A lot of people have thrown theirs in the gutter in order to try to take down Donald Trump.
yeah, 100%. So have you guys ever thought of like maybe going outside the box and like just setting up a table at like gigantic events and being like, hey, come and fill out a survey poll and take data that way? Or would that be something that would kind of be like a waste of time? Like, I'm thinking like something crazy, like going to Coachella, right? And like just sitting out of Coachella for a few days. And yeah, they're all drugged out of their mind, but I feel like that maybe would help get like the younger demographic, right? Because like you said, it's mostly your 50 plus that are answering these,
Yeah.
and we have a good idea of what they like, and they're still dominating politics in every which way, and even like business and things like that. But I feel like, there's a smaller representation of, at my age group, 30s, 40s. I feel like we're now getting into the age where we're like, yeah, we'll answer those things. They're important to us, right? But
Yeah.
like that younger group, your college age stuff and things like that, they're not
I
really
kind
active. It hasn't
of
hit
get
them yet.
them. I
Yeah.
get them. Well, here's why. It's like they're poor, so they have like lock screen apps on their Samsung, and those
Mhm.
recruit them into these gimmicks where they can win a gift card to whatever. Like, there are ways to get those people. Ultimately, what it comes down to is that getting the respondent and their time is tough
Yeah.
because you can't reach everybody. And so now it's all fragmented, and it comes down to how do you recruit these people like in a cost effective manner. And what we do by using these basically these online panels are an aggregate of other panel owners who are,
Yeah.
it's like sellers on eBay trying to
Okay.
sell their panel. And so what happens is they like build their panels on venture capital money or something. And
Mhm.
so we're paying cut rate because they're trying to grow their panel. there's eventually I think people are like venturing into AI panel respondents. There will be all kinds of stuff like that.
Wild, yeah.
And I don't know, we'll see. I mean, we'll exist and we'll do what we think we have to do to be accurate, but we haven't had to go into cell phone, we haven't had to go into SMS messaging, and someday we will. But
100%.
yeah.
So has it always been this vicious since you guys started in the early 2000s, or was there more of a camaraderie amongst pollsters? Because you guys were all doing the same thing. Obviously, some
Oh
of you
no,
maybe
no.
had some different methodologies, but you guys were all generally, or was it always super competitive in the polling world of screw you guys, we're going to try and be, I guess at one point the best, and now it seems like they want to be the most influential outside, and it's a similar turn to journalism, right? Like they want to be
Yeah.
activists, they want to be like, there's some polls I feel like you guys are one that try to be accurate, and because you try to be accurate you get painted as right wing because you're not just flaunting all over the
Yeah.
left, right?
There are no
So,
right wing polls. There are none. There
and
are
there
zero,
shouldn't be.
literally zero right wing
But there
polls.
shouldn't be, right? Like there shouldn't be any weighted right wing polls. There shouldn't be any weighted left wing polls intentionally, right? Obviously, sometimes when you go and give out the calls, okay, there was X amount more Democrat respondents than
Yeah.
Republicans, and
Right.
you can't handle that. But you always put that in your methodology, right? Like, hey, this is what it is, but these are the numbers. And those are always the polls I trust the most, right? Where you can look at the
Yeah.
polls and then it's like, here's our separate page of our demographic breakdown, how this worked out. And I've always found those, but like, so was it always this cutthroat and vicious when you guys first started?
Well, before I answer that, just to follow on with what you're saying, is that transparency doesn't work. It doesn't. It's just a thing that people hide behind. Because I could give you everything, my data.
Yeah.
I could still have deleted data points, and you'll never know. And so it's really hard, though, being in the industry to know which ones are lying, which ones messed up, which ones it's just statistical noise. But then
We
sometimes you
have to
see the
put body
matrix.
cams on all of you. We have to put body cams
Yeah.
as you're getting it so that you guys have to release the body cam footage along with the polls. So we know those hours and hours of getting these polls.
Hold on. Hold on. My Jack Russell's making noise. Back here.
Oh, that's
Oh,
awesome. You have my
Jack
puppy.
Russell attack.
I have my door closed, or otherwise my puppy would be running around in here as well.
Oh yeah, but one time I was like getting bit, like she wanted to play. She's like biting my hand while I'm like on air on like Fox or something. It was
That's what makes
ridiculous.
them the best, though. Like that's what
Yeah.
makes them the best. Dogs don't
Go
care; they just want
away.
to play.
Go away. So about the industry, and you have to take it with a grain of salt. I came from outside the industry. Literally the first poll, the first research I ever ran was March of 2021. This was my first presidential cycle, and I clowned everybody, which tells you it's really not about competence. And listen, I do think I'm a competent person,
Yeah,
and it was really hard, and I worked very like long hours, long weeks during the election cycle. But it really is about like integrity and independence. It really is. But going back, I think what happened is like kind of most things in the 20th century is that there was this like air of superiority and credentialism about it. It was like mostly academic research institutes and journalists who like worship journalistic creed and stuff like that.
yeah.
And they got a lot of money to do their polling. And, they took some licks, like the 80 election was pretty bad. And you can go back and read it's really incredible to read some of the articles about the 80 election. And there are a lot of parallels to hear, oh, well, we didn't know. And oh, everything must have moved in the last 2 weeks. And oh, because Reagan was a square peg in a round hole and they didn't know what to do with him. And they were same kind of thing. Oh, it's really tough to sample Reagan people. And
Well, the thing with Reagan too that people forget is Reagan and Trump have similarities in a lot of ways. They differ in terms of how they, their policies and how they kind of govern, right? But they were similar in the sense that at the time that Reagan ran, Hollywood was fully against him because he vocally and openly was like, "Hey, when I went to my last SAG meeting, they were all giving the freaking communist salute. I'm out." And and I remember, and if there was a good story
right.
about that over in Killing Reagan, by what you call it, Bill O'Reilly and Martin Duggar.
O'Reilly,
They're
yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, it's a great book. I recommend people. The Killing series is great. Whatever you think of Bill O'Reilly, the Killing series is incredible. He's a really good historian in that sense. But he had the story in there, and it was basically Reagan's eyes opening to my party that he was a lifelong Democrat himself. And he's like,
Yeah.
this party's been captured by communism. And that's where he came to the Republican side and kind of shifted gears there. But he was very much Hollywood hated him. The rich and powerful didn't like him anymore because he was one of them. And then he told them to kick rocks. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarities. And I can understand how a lot of these elitists would try and get to the polls, right? To sway public opinion against him. Now, being a pollster, do you get phone calls from outlets? And obviously, you don't have to give anyone away, but phone calls from outlets trying to solicit a positive poll or politicians or things like that? Or have you been in the business long enough where they know you're above reproach, leave you alone?
Yeah. Oh well, I'll finish the last thing and lead it into. It's like the same question, right?
Go for it.
But so Scott founded our company in 2000s,
Yeah.
and he was like kind of a redheaded stepchild, outsider, rebel kind of thing. Oh, how could he possibly how could he possibly go to the masses in an automatic way, and it undermines all of our and then he like literally clowned them in elections by nailing. It was a lot easier when all of your polling was landline phones and people picked them up. You could
Yep.
get the national popular vote within like 0.2% and stuff like that. And so he was not invited to any cocktail parties. I can tell you that the AAPOR wanted nothing to do with us. And talking to our president, in his estimation, independent polling became a real problem because it was showing up all the mainstream media pollsters. So much so that what he thinks himself is that 538 was a responsive op to independent pollsters of whom we were the number one people,
Yeah.
and that internal campaign polling had been leaked from the Obama administration to Nate Silver
Yeah.
in order to help found 538. And the whole model is BS. And the whole reason that they set it up is a gatekeeping operation so that they could put fake scores on all of these ivory tower pollsters that have been hiding in the ivory tower this entire time. So they despise us. They hate us with every fiber of their being. 538 kicked us out of their aggregate. And then Nate Silver downranked us because he says we're a Republican pollster, even though we've never, ever done a job for the Republican National Committee, as far as I know. Never taken money from any political party. So it's all fake and they hate us. And it's because liberalism uses credentialism and information gatekeeping and as a tool, as a blunt force bludgeon, basically, in order to enforce the narrative. So yeah, like we got media that reaches out to us and they're like, oh, we're going to run a story that says that you're lying scumbags and you have 20 minutes to respond. And we usually flip them off, or I'll give them some like really sarcastic quote. 538 gave us an ultimatum and they wanted information out of us and I didn't want to give it. I went on a Steve Bannon show and called them a bunch of like ideological bags. But as far as the clients that come to us, few though there now are, and this is one of the big things, like I would say really, 20% of our business is election prediction.
Mhm.
80% of the time we're polling about issues. And that's one of the reasons we're more accurate. Like I pegged what the Biden administration did to America. It messed a whole lot of stuff up. People were super pissed off. And that's why Trump won. It had nothing to do with Kamala Harris. And so I would love to do more of that. But like one of the ways I can tell you that the Republican Party has no interest in winning is that we can poll really cheaply and not a single one of them has cut a check to us to come and understand the issue of abortion, understand more about how we can message on the border, understand how they can apply America First MAGA principles to other establishment Republican candidates. They don't want to do that. They want Trump gone. And the few people that come to us tend to be 501c3s who are not headquartered in Washington, D.C., and they have values and principles. And so it's a problem that doesn't come up. I mean, we have ways set up, like it ultimately comes down to our principles. Like I will not run a push poll. You have to trust me that I'm divulging everything. We publish every question we ask. And other people don't. They'll cherry pick stuff. They'll put their thumb on their scale. Like it's so painfully obvious that when money wants something, the pollsters will give it to them. I'll give you a really good example. Gallup has been polling Ukraine, like actually going to Ukrainians, knocking on doors and texting them on cell phones. One of the questions they asked is, should we stop fighting or should we continue to fight until we regain all the Russian territory? And that number used to be in the high 70s to keep fighting. And then I think the last time they did it just a few months ago was like it dropped a lot. It was in like the 40s or 50s, massive
Yeah.
drop.
Yeah, absolutely. It's huge.
Then this other organization went and polled Ukrainians also, spent a lot of money to go and poll Ukrainians every year for the last 5 years. And their number used to be in the 70s for that same question too. No, it used to be in the 80s. It's still like 78% the last time they polled just a couple months ago. So they're 30 or 40 points off from Gallup. Guess what that organization is?
Probably a very bought and paid for front by the leftists that want to keep fighting.
Oh, not the leftists.
The Republicans?
It's the International Republican Institute, of which Mitt
Embarrassing.
Romney is a bought and paid for USAID recipient
Oh,
on the board.
it's
And
the
they want
worst.
their freaking forever wars. They want their empire building in Eurasia. And they'll even manipulate the poll. Now, they'll say, oh, it's the Ukrainian pollster that did it. And they're probably right. But the Ukrainian pollster knows that the American Republican is tied into the military industrial complex, I guess, and just wants to keep, like it's that sick. Like,
That is
they're
terrible.
34. They weren't off, and then they were off all of the sudden, right? Like Gallup's like, oh man, the Ukrainians are punching out, and the IRI USAID is like, no, they're not. Like,
It
oh
was
man,
actually funny during the Biden administration to watch Nate Silver kind of flounder because he didn't know what to do to help Biden. And he, like you saw, he was kind of all over the place in his comments. There were times where he was, pissing off the right, which he normally does. But then there were times where he was truly pissing off the left because the few times where Nate Silver kind of spoke reality of Biden, where he was like, hey, our poll, we can't weight our poll enough to make this guy favorable, right? Like there were points where even he had to admit, like, there's something with his
yeah.
age, and right away, boom, Nate Silver. And it was interesting to watch him flounder in that sense. And it made it more and more obvious that, you know, forcing a lot of these polls to become honest because of just the total ineptitude of Biden was incredibly funny. And then we had individuals like we had Gallup, we had kind of Trafalgar just plugging away and trying to do things more the right way. And you guys were, much more accurate. You
Well,
guys pegged Biden just being inept, Biden doing all the corrupt things. And really, with all of the issues that were going to be important in this 2024 election, I feel like you guys were really accurate in terms of the issues that were going to determine it.
yeah, I mean, we literally nailed this election. I was putting out Trump plus twos for months when
Yeah.
everybody else said that Harris was +5, +6. And like some of these other guys do a good job, like Trafalgar and Rich Barris. I trust. I think they're good.
Yeah, Rich
Emerson,
is
I
pretty
don't
good. Yeah.
really. Yeah, yeah, I'm friends with him. He's awesome. Emerson, I don't know much about him, but I can tell from their numbers, their polls are really good too. I think they're about a point left, but hey, I kind of was too. We did 6 out of 7 swing states right. The 7th was a toss up, and that's fine. I mean, we were showing Trump winning in every single state set we did, going all the way back to July.
Yeah.
And again, some of these are like Atlas. I mean, they're really good on November 4th, right? But you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, they're great then. And it's kind of interesting too because I feel like whatever side you're on that loses automatically hates the polls, right? Like that's just how it works. The polls get blamed a lot of time. And even
yeah.
going back to like the 2016 and 2020 election, some polls were terribly off, right? But I feel like even majority, even the bad polls, were all hanging out within the margin of error. Even when they were like off,
Well,
it was all margin of error. So when you really look back at it, and I'm a fan of Glenn Beck, so Stu Burguiere is constantly talking about the polls there. He's a very big poll guy. And he brought up, he's like, even if you look back at, even the 2016 anomalous election, everyone was still generally within the margin of error. So it's not like they
oh
were like
yeah.
10 points up, or they were saying that, okay, we were going to have 3 points for Hillary. It was going to, so it all worked within. So it's not like they were dead off. They were just trying to put their
Yeah.
thumb on a little more.
Well, there's a couple of things going on here. First, I'll say, like, us being accurate this time out wasn't an outlier. Like, like in general in elections have been much more accurate than the mainstream media pollsters. But I will say, as have pretty much all the other independent pollsters. It really is about independence. And what they do is they cherry pick very public failures. Like, for instance, Trafalgar was getting raked over the calls over some Tudor Dixon poll. And you know what? I might have polled that too, and I might have found the same thing and gotten raked over the coals too. God
Yeah.
knows we've missed a few times. Like, I was way off in Texas and Ohio this time,
Well, you
understating
can
Trump's
only go
support.
off who responds to your polls
Yeah.
too, right? So you're getting a pulse on who responds. So it's generally pretty good, but it's hard. It's hard because if
Oh,
it's not easy.
like, at the end of the day, the whole point of statistics is to take multiple samples over and over again. And
Yeah.
like, I only had one shot at Texas, and it's like you can't control where it's going to be in the bell curve, and then I can't learn from what I got and improve it and go back in. So again, it's tough. And Trafalgar, I'll give him credit for having a lot of courage, because he'll say, you know what, this election's coming up, it's important, it's going to be tough to poll, and I'm going to do it. And a lot of those I'd say, yeah, maybe not. And they rake him over the coals for some of these calls. But I'll say, like, when Rasmussen, speaking for myself, when we tend to do bad, it's when, in my opinion, the Democrats have figured out a new trick. And so we
You're
were
always ahead.
most off in 2018, and 2018 was the cycle. It was an off cycle.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, they doubled the amount of Act Blue funding that got raised from 800 million to 1.6 billion in an off cycle. And I think a lot of that money got put to use, and I think they were doing other hijinks. And so we were pretty off there. And then about 2020, what I will say too is that everybody's like, oh, Rasmussen had Biden +1. Well, that was where the music stopped. But in the last couple of weeks of the election, we had him everywhere between Biden +12 and Biden +1. Our average was Biden +6.5, I think. So we were actually too left. We were like, Biden's going to win by more than he did. And we were way too left in the swing states. But like, I can objectively look at everything that happened. Like, Trump outperformed in the swing states.
Yeah.
And like, we all saw, like it was stolen. Like, you know what I mean?
100%.
Like, they did the pipe bursts and all that other stuff. And so I think that stuff, I think there was still fraud this time. And I was actually sweating bullets. I thought they were going to steal it again. And I think there was less of it, but I still think we got probably a whole point of, California motor voter and like people that were wheeling out suitcases that nobody knew about in places where they needed to, and multiple Senate races that were probably like, I hope they go after that. We have an election integrity task force now. I've been waiting for that to be unveiled. It was just like a week or two ago. So hopefully big happening soon.
So I want to get to a few comments real quick. Robert Whaley
Yeah.
coming in saying good evening, Alex and Mark, and then he came back saying Rasmussen is the only poll I trust, and that is before I knew of Mark. So that's pretty high praise. And then a few of our normals over there, Caveat Ties and Nate. What's going on, gentlemen?
Here's a distinction. Trust me, not the poll, because I don't trust my own polls, right? It's like, I'm giving you data and I'll try and tell you what I think about it, but you need to use that data for your own decision-making process. Look at the betting markets, look at the headlines. But like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying. It comes down to, this is not like, it's hard and it's not always right.
Caveat Ties coming in with the fun joke saying hard to trust those polls. They had to deal with the Russians and Germans. Yes. Listen, poor Polish people. They just kept on getting screwed over, battle after battle, war after war. But so here is I'm drawing a blank. We're going to go on to something else. I had a good question, then I lost it. So now we're going to move on real quick, and then I'm going to circle back to that. I'm going to pull what was her face? The other press secretary. We're going to circle back when I remember it. But
Kelly,
yeah. So
no. You're talking about the Biden one, yeah. KJP.
Yeah, Biden. Yeah, there it is. So what is some of the worst things that you have seen with the polls outside of your own, like some of the most deceptive practices that you know of that have gone on from other polls? And again, you don't have to name names, but are there some practices that you've seen that happened?
I mean, like, I could pull up a screen and show you like a million of them right now. So let's talk about how these things happen. Okay, so there's the ones that I don't know about is that, again, they could say, well, I know that my landline, I know that my live operator is going to be more left than my online panel. So maybe I'll just lean into that more than this. Or maybe it's like, well, I know that my independents are kind of conservative here, so I'll get more independents there. Or it could be like, I'm cleaning my data. Delete, 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 delete. Like
It's
I
like
have to clean
statistics,
that.
right? You can make them say
Yeah,
whatever you want them to say as long as you get them from the right place, right?
exactly 100%. And then there's like, well, I could also word the questions inappropriately. Donald Trump
Yes.
has been recorded on video kicking kittens. Who are you going to vote for, Trump or Harris? Um, like that happens. And then even little things like the order that they appear in questions, whether you
Mhm.
put issue questions before matchup questions or vice versa,
And there
the
is a
time
science to that,
you
right? There
pull.
is a science sometimes to doing that, I'd imagine.
Well, like in art, I mean, it really
Yeah,
is
yeah.
like, and then so there's all that. Like that's what the pollster can do. Then they could get their data back, weight it, not like the results, go get more data. They could play around with the weightings to goal seek some result. They can do all of this stuff. And it all ultimately comes back to, and I have to do this stuff. Like that's what it comes. I have to delete data, but I
Yeah,
have to do it because some of these people don't read. But it's like if I'm looking at who they voted for and then deleting, that's a problem. It's going to affect
100%.
the signal. So it really comes down to integrity. So then
Yep.
there's that. Okay. So it's like I've created a poll and maybe I've gotten over selection or confirmation bias, meaning like I didn't like the result. I'm going to go back and get more. Didn't like the result. Going to go back and go. I finally like the result. You know what I mean? So I'm going to publish it. Right. And
Yep.
then it's the boss is like, ooh, we can't publish that. This happened this weekend, and George Stephanopoulos is going to crap a brick. We can't go on Sunday. You know, like that happens.
Mhm.
And I think I'll give you a really good example. I think that happened to Nate Cohn, who polls for the New York Times, because he was putting out polls in two state sets. He put out Arizona and Pennsylvania on a very important weekend. I think it was like maybe the weekend right before Kamala Harris's debate.
Yeah.
And they had Trump +5 in Arizona and then Harris +3 in Pennsylvania. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, you pair the good news with the bad news,
Yep.
but like Trump needed Pennsylvania, so that was bad news for Trump. Go inside the crosstabs and easily in 30 seconds, it shows what the people voted for in 2020. They were 9 points heavy on Biden 2020 voters in Pennsylvania. And so if you correct for that, it's like a Trump +5 poll. And
Jesus.
that's but the boss, I'm sure the boss says, "Well, we can't run that
Nope,
headline.
not
Go
at all.
back and fix that." So he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, God, I gotta go get more of these Biden vote." And he probably waited for recalled vote, was told to unwait for it, and then on August 16th, he wrote a whole article about why he's not waiting for recalled vote, and it's like reasons. Like it's the dumbest article. You can go look it up.
It's so
And we
tedious.
were accurate and he wasn't solely because of that. But then it's like, okay, well, if you're honest and then you don't get shut down by your boss and then you get it out and you're okay with being yelled at your cocktail parties, the media is still going to cherry pick what they want. They're and like the best example of that is that there was this Fairleigh Dickinson University research paper where they asked Trump versus Harris, and it was Harris +1, which it's like, okay, you're within the margin of error. And then they were like, okay, now we're going to ask a whole bunch of questions about gender and race. And then they asked Harris and Trump again, and Harris won by 7 points.
That makes
And
sense.
guess what the headline in the Hill was?
Harris +7.
Harris +7. And they
So
barely even explained. It was like in paragraph 5. Nobody read it where it
no.
was like, oh, well, it was preceded by a bunch of. And so it's but like the point is that all of these forces, all of these subtle nudges all go in one direction. And it's like polling's not unique. It's happening in the churches, in the
Everywhere.
academia, in
Yeah, yeah.
entertainment, in writing rooms, everywhere. And it's not, here's what's crazy about it. It's not even the majority culture. The majority, like Trump's platform is more popular than Trump is. Like kick the
Yes.
trannies out is like 2-to-1 more popular.
It's in the
And yet,
80/20. Everyone talks about the 80/20 topics. Like the
yeah.
80/20 topics were there before Trump was there in a lot of these things.
Like the problem is on average, because of Joe Biden and the Overton window, 80-20 has turned into more like 65-35. And so the Overton
So
window
crazy.
needs to come back to the right.
Yes. Which I
But
think
it's
it
like,
slowly is. It slowly is.
yeah, no, I agree. and it will, maybe rapidly when our fourth turning crisis comes, which is due any day now. Let me check my
It's
watch. Like,
unfortunately, I feel like you're right about that. So, are there
oh,
times
100%.
where you are polling and you go to an area, and I'd imagine sometimes when you're going in to poll some things, like when you're going with certain candidates in an election, like you have a good idea of how the poll will play out before you get there. Do you sometimes get like a first round and you look at it and you're just like, there's no way that these results are true? And do you kind of have a pulse when you go in there of some of these, looking at it going, okay, what were the respondents like? This is way too off from what we initially anticipated, right?
Yeah.
Or do you just kind of go where the chips lie sometimes? Like what? Because I can imagine like you're probably looking like Fetterman Oz, right? Fetterman Oz, Dr. Oz was a terrible candidate. So I'd imagine Fetterman was polling well regardless. He was well known in the area. Dr. Oz was from New Jersey and not that part of Pennsylvania. So it was like, even with the Trump endorsement, Oz was probably on the low end anyway. I can imagine if you got a poll and it came in and was like Oz plus 20, you're like, okay, what the hell? Like this
Yeah.
isn't like, so do you kind of have those every once in a while where you're looking and
Yeah.
going, we maybe need
100%.
to go back out there and do this again because this doesn't smell right?
Well, here's the problem is that we publish everything we poll. We have to, because what happens is, like if I go into the field in Arizona or something,
Yeah.
there's like a non-zero chance that some journalist is taking that poll. And there's a non-zero chance that in a week or two they're going to be like, "Hey, where's that Rasmussen poll?"
Yeah.
And if they don't see it, they think we spiked the results, and they'll have a story about. And it sounds like low odds, but it's happened. It's actually happened to us before.
And
There
of
was
course, they're
one
going after
poll.
you. They're going after Gallup. If you Gallup,
Yeah,
Trafalgar, a handful of you guys do it, of course they're going to run that article. But if my good old trusty Maris poll, which is attached to ABC, does that,
yeah.
they're not going to
Well,
say a word, right? You know.
they're not going to go after. They're not going to go after Gallup though. That's like, a sacred cow. You can't touch them.
That's true.
But yeah, like literally, my predecessor did a poll. I forget what state it was, like New Hampshire or something, and they had to throw out the data because they literally just programmed it wrong. There was
Yeah.
all these questions that got skipped, and they didn't have the data they needed. They couldn't do it, and you can't use that data because it's like, what are you going to go back and like get these people's ages? You don't even know like necessarily who they are. And so they ditched it, and some reporter like ran a story like legitimately. So it's like, here's the problem. If I wanted to predict the outcome of a state election or something, I would like to poll 10 times. And the problem is you can't. You're lucky if you get one, two, or three, because it all comes down to getting sponsorship funding for these things. I got to find a sponsor. We were practically giving our polling away for free because of the fact that we actually leaned into like election integrity and COVID vaccine polling.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I get a poll back, and it's like, it's still open, but I'll look at the data when it's like 700 or 800 and I'll see what I got. And like, you never really know till you weight it. And I can weight it many different ways. And usually it's like, hey, this is what I expected, and everything's copacetic. And sometimes it's like, this is not what I expected. And then the process I would go through is like, well, did I clean the data well enough? Like, and we put traps for people, like we'll alternate favorability between Republican, Democrat, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, sometimes you just get like, hey, a third of the poll is independents, and I got too many third parties and not enough unaffiliated or something like that. Or my unaffiliated group, their number one issue is abortion when it should be economy. And then it's like a judgment call where it's like, I could get more of them. Again, it's not because I want Trump to win. It's because these independents aren't behaving like I've seen in previous polling or
Yeah.
something
It
like
comes with
that.
experience, right? The smell test, and it's
Yeah,
like,
well, you're
okay,
baking a cake, and it's like, hey, like this batch of whatever isn't like the last batch. And so you go back into the field for more data, or you might wait by like a sub demographic. Like this happened to me in Pennsylvania. For some reason, my Pennsylvania independents were just like I can see exit polling, I could see our previous polling, and it's like, no, the independents in Pennsylvania didn't move 15 points left. They should have moved right.
yeah,
And then so I take my independents and I see, well, I'm getting 50% liberals and 20% moderates when it should be like vice versa or whatever, right?
yep,
And so I'll weight within independence by ideology, problem solve. And That is not what Jay Ann Seltzer of the Des Moines Iowa Register
Oh
poll
my
did.
god.
She just like literally got like, and sometimes you just get a big crap pile, and
But
it's
remember,
like,
Mark,
well,
she was already resigning before that terrible poll. Remember?
yeah, no, I know. Yeah, she wanted to go out on a high note. She wanted to
Oh.
be part of the cool girls club. She was probably auditioning for I'd never thought about this before. I bet you she was auditioning for a paid expert spot on MSNBC. I bet you that what it was.
Or an intern, or like the head internal poller of the next presidential candidate too, because like
Well,
that could be.
she doesn't have the chops for that. I can tell you. Like when I come from outside the industry, and I've been through one, like when the ink is only 10 days dry on my first presidential cycle, and I watch your interview, and I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like there's a problem. Like,
that
there's a
that is
really big
big.
problem.
So what are
Yeah.
your typical windows for how long you run a poll? Because I'd imagine that definitely affects it too. Like you give most polls like a week, 2 days, 24 hours. Like does it depend on the poll or the sample you want to grab? Like what is your typical timeline for most like for your polls?
I mean, if you came to me today and said, "Hey, I want a national poll by tomorrow," I could get it done. And
Jesus.
what we do is usually for our daily polling, we spread it out over 3 nights to get 1,000 results. And it's fine. It's like maybe Sunday night there's a basketball game, but there's not going to be on Monday. So yeah, like it all kind of like balances out.
Yeah.
State polling, depending on the state, like part of it is we want to keep the cost down. So it's like you give me a state or a congressional district, and I might stretch it out for a week or two, but that's to like avoid paying more money. But if you want your poll again by tomorrow, fine, you're gonna have to pony up cash, is what it comes down to.
And that's
I
someone
don't
that no
think it
one
has.
thinks about either, I
Yeah.
think, is the price of all this. Because I think we just think like it's a poll, call people, but it's like time is money. You got to pay people to do it,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So it's not cheap.
Yeah, our landline phone calls are basically free. But
Wow.
again, they're of limited use. Our right now our data costs for our online panel, which is not clean data. It's really not. I think there's a lot of people from Nigeria behind VPNs, and you got to try and trap those people.
Yeah.
And I think it's like 70, 80, 90 cents a complete. Um, if I have to get a congressional district, it might go up to $5 a complete. And then it's like, well, I think for live operator calling, they're some of these organizations are paying $30 or $40 to get a completed sample, like
Wow.
one person. And we just can't do that. And maybe someday, but it's there. Like again, the money in the industry is okay. You're attached to a multi-billion-dollar organization, or you're getting taxpayer funded dark money NGO stuff to run push polls, and we don't run push polls. So that's the problem.
Yeah. So that I've always been curious about that too. Let me get to a few of the comments here. Caveats eyes jumping in saying, I remember I was pulled once. They highlighted a gob of liberal positive quote unquote facts and then asked, quote, do these facts make you more or less likely to support this cause? How do you honestly answer? And then caveat followed up and said, I said less likely for everyone just because of the terrible methodology. I mean, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Robert Whaley coming in saying, I'm in Pennsylvania. So you go be on the lookout for Cliff Maloney of PHA's. Cliff's awesome. If you're over in
Hmm.
Pennsylvania. And then
Now you know
Nate
Cliff?
G. Yeah, Cliff was on the show. Cliff came on the
Oh,
show.
cool.
He was a good
Oh
dude.
man, I gotta get him on my show. I met him at AmFest, and I didn't get a chance to have a beer with him, and
He's
I really
so all
wanted
over
to.
the place now. He is everywhere. I'm so happy that he's kind of blown up because Scott Pressler did incredible work, right? And he did so many good things. And Pennsylvania was like generally they gave Scott all the credit. Cliff and PHA's knocked on
Oh
500,000 doors.
no,
Okay.
dude! You
Uh,
just like you
I'm not
just
throwing shade at
erected
anyone.
a lightning rod.
I'm not throwing shade at anyone. Scott's amazing. What Scott does, he gives up his life to go and live in a car half the time and get the work done. But I just Cliff was a really good dude. I loved what he did with PHAs, and he's now trying to expand to different parts of the country to get that door knocking operation, that ground operation that Republicans absolutely fucking suck about having. So I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that everyone knows Cliff worked his ass off. 500,000 doors is no joke for
Talk
an
to him. I'd
election
love to
cycle.
hear what kind of discussions he's having with the money. Because here's what blows my mind is that there's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars available to Republicans, and it all gets spent on themselves in this really disgusting money laundering
Well,
operation
Mark,
where
it's
they
the
just pay their
uniparty.
friends.
It's
Yeah,
the
no, I know.
uniparty, and the thing is, it's like there's a reason why your more populist, the paleo conservatives are always on the outs. There's a reason why the uniparty always scoffed at Rush Limbaugh, never listened to him, and now when you have a guy like Trump who is doing generally what all of these uniparty shills have been talking about and writing about, and he comes in and wants
No.
to do them, now all of a sudden they don't want to do them. I mean, it's a very obvious game that they play. It's all about staying in power. It's all about as little or nothing to do with, doing the job. And I mean,
Yeah.
I think Laura Trump got out of the RNC because she realized that there's only so much she could do, even as the head of the RNC, right?
Well,
Because
that's a
they're
bad call. They should have burned it down.
they should have they should have disassembled it
And
because the RNC is
it's not
awful.
just the RNC. You got the NRCC, the
They're all terrible.
senatorial Republican
Yeah,
leadership,
yeah,
the
all terrible.
Republican governors. It all needs to get killed with fire because they are not
Yes.
they're not America first. They
Nope.
are more interested in laundering campaign funding. And like basically the tenor of what I've heard is that from talking to grassroots organizations, and we know this, there is an army of like distributed grassroots volunteers across the country that love Donald Trump, that will work blood, sweat, and tears for free to help him win.
Mhm.
And then there's also some organizations, and they get a limited amount of funding.
Yep.
And they do work. Some of them do more work than others. Some of them take more credit than others. Um, but the amount of money getting spent on those organizations is bupkis compared to the amount of money that the Republicans have to bear. So, like, I asked this question. Maybe you know the answer. I'm like, ask everybody. Like, what's the largest, most well-funded organization who is going to primary rhinos?
Right now, if he stays true to it, it's Elon because Elon has his pack that he says that he's primarying all the shitty Republicans that are going against, what MAGA wants. Now, here's the thing: I have a basket of good Elon and bad Elon. Right? I don't trust Elon Musk. Elon Musk has done some great things. He's going to go down as being one of the greatest inventors in the history of man. He's going to be up there with your Teslas and
No,
Edisons.
he's part of the oligarchy, though. He is. I
But
agree with you.
he's
Yeah.
also a climate psycho. Like people forget the whole reason why he started SpaceX and how he has Tesla, why he has the Boring Company, why everything is
Yeah.
there is to get to Mars because he believes that climate change is going to destroy this world. So it's kind of he's the one that
Yeah.
says he would primary these awful housing, but do you here's the thing. He wants to you're going to spend all of your wealth because they will go to no ends to keep in power. And also a big problem with our
Well,
Republicans is where's our big billionaires donating to our smaller causes, right? There's a ton of
Well, no,
conservative
that's the
billionaires.
whole
They don't
point.
do
The
it.
billionaires are captive by the Heritage Foundation, the Club for
Yeah.
Growth. It's all the old
Mhm.
money. Now, there is new money, but the new, like my whole pitch here is that the new money is not being put to work. And you can say what you want about Elon primarying people, but like my internal lived experience here is that I've talked to four now MAGA candidates who plan to primary a Rhino Republican. And what they say is they have nobody to go to. There's no money. They have no idea what the hell the America PAC is doing. There's nobody to talk to. And I don't know how well funded it is, but from all outward
Yeah.
appearances, it's not really doing anything, so to speak of. And the only other organization I know of is um, Leo the Lion's Rhino Removal Project, and they're like trying to scrape together a couple of mil. I don't know how that's going. So it's like, okay, you got Bill Ackman, you got Larry Ellison, like pony up, like, and I'm not saying dig in your pocketbook, Bill, but like go find a couple of your friends.
Well, here's
You
the thing,
like
Mark.
they were able to put together 400 million or whatever it was to try and take out Trump with Ron DeSantis, and you're
Yeah.
telling me that you can't put together a national organization to rally all these grassroots forces into a centralized manner to like lead everybody in
So
an anti. Yeah.
here's the main difference. The billionaire Republicans are still businessmen and businesswomen that want to run their business, and they're going to go where they think their pocket is best. Where your leftist billionaires are typically true believers. So they will sit there and they will continue your Soros, your Tom Steyers, your Bloombergs. They're all true believers, and there's so many more, right? So for them, they're willing to pony up this money because they want to further the cause of leftism. That is their goal.
Yeah.
That's their religion. That is their everything. Where the capitalists that are typically on the conservative side are just that. They're capitalists. So
Right.
they are going to go, it's like, look at Kevin O'Leary. Kevin O'Leary's fantastic now, right? He's saying all the right things because obviously he's friendly with Donald Trump, being in the New York mogul. He sees Trump as good for his pocket. Where was Kevin O'Leary these past 25 years? Right? Where was he? He was on Shark Tank doing his thing. And I'm not going to knock anyone now for being brave when it's easy to be brave. But where were you during Obama? Where were you during Biden? Why weren't you out there? You were making your billions. You were becoming a billionaire in New York, and you wanted to make sure you were stable. And I'm not mad at anyone for that. But that's the big issue where the leftists, they're going to be leftists regardless. The conservatives are going to protect their pockets because it's not a religion. This isn't a religion for conservatives. This is actually a political party.
The slack I'll give these people is that if you were making money in the 2000s and into the 2010s, I can understand how you can look around culturally and say, well, things aren't that bad. Everybody's happy. Everything's going in the right direction. And so I'm just going to make it rain.
Generally, yeah.
I think that's what a lot of people were doing. Problem is that Biden represented an existential threat like to America, and that woke a lot of people up. So I get like kind of how they're here now, but it's like, okay, well, Elon, you can't talk about economic populism and how the middle class has been hollowed out by globalism and then be against H-1B reform, bro. Like they're two incompatible things, in my opinion. And well, like your point about all these billionaires is spot on. I don't get to DC a lot, but I have a few people I trust. One of these guys been a client of ours for a long time. And we have done a lot of state polling on the issue of E-Verify because states have put it in the law. It's a federal program, but it's not mandated anywhere. So some of the conservative states have said, hey, we'll go ahead and do it. And so what we do is that we go into the state, we poll on it. We always show that people love E-Verify, like 70-20, and then it gets passed into law. But you know what? Like Speaker Johnson could put that thing into law basically tomorrow. And I asked this guy, and like, hey, you're in the Beltway. Like, why doesn't it happen? And the response I got is that Republicans love slave labor.
Yep, they do. And that's the thing. And they will make sure this immigration thing does not go all the way because they are the ones benefiting the most from it. So that's actually a good segue because one of the things that's been driving me absolutely fucking crazy about Republicans, and I don't know if you're people like cursing, I curse, I apologize. But the Republican pundits and people on the right doing podcasts consistently keep screaming to the moons. The Democrats have nobody coming for 2028. Look at how weak they are. They have no leadership. And here I am, a Rush baby, and someone who's looking and has loved politics my whole life and is like, the worst thing you can tell a Republican voter is to sit back and relax. They have nobody, right? Always play politics like you're losing. And that drives me insane to hear the pundits screaming for high heavens. Don't take AOC seriously. Like, oh, no, absolutely take AOC seriously, okay? Because we have seen the leftist voter vote for worse, like honestly. So, in terms of polling, do you guys have a
here's
pulse?
The facts.
Go for it.
Okay, first off, the right way to think about this is that this is World War III and it's an information war. Okay.
Yes, it is.
It's establishment versus freedom. And so everything's dangerous. Nothing can be discounted. Okay. Okay. That being said, the numbers you've heard about the Democrat Party favorability, I think are fake news. People have been saying 29, 27%. I mean, it's the same people that had Harris up 7. Like, you know what I mean? It's people don't like to acknowledge this, but we showed Biden approval was higher than most other pollsters.
Yeah.
It's lower than Trump's by about 4 or 5 points on average, but it was higher because people liked that guy and they were able to easily dismiss his shortcomings. The Democrat Party approval rating is, I think the last time we had it was like 44%. So those people still exist. They did not go away. They kind of stopped answering polls for a while. They will show back up. And so what's also true is that the Democrat Party is in a state of utter chaos. They were soundly beaten and they don't have a strategy. They've lost their centralized power.
So, quick
And
question, Mark, though.
yeah.
Doesn't the party that loses typically get into this way regardless when they reshuffle, though? And because, the Republicans were there with DeSantis trying to challenge and things like that. And obviously, when I was always of the opinion when Trump got serious, it didn't matter. And when he got serious, it didn't matter. But
Oh,
every party
yeah.
kind of goes
DeSantis
that
never had a
way.
shot.
No, but and he ran a terrible campaign. He would have had a better shot if he didn't listen to the wrong people. But every party I feel gets this way as they're starting to figure out who's going to get to the primaries, right? Because AOC obviously wants to do it. Gretchen wants to do it. Kamala wants to come back. I could see, there's that one guy out of Chicago, I think that, I forget, Mark something, he's jumping in. And there's some names, Ro Khanna, I wouldn't be surprised. Mark Fetterman, like there are names and it's like they need to differentiate. And so I think we're seeing this internal war in the same way we see Republicans do it whenever, like going into post Obama, right? Both parties were at each other's throat, and then they kind of figure out where they want to go. And Democrats, better than any group, will rally and manifest right behind whatever they pick as the leadership, where Republicans kind of
Yeah.
fragment. So this is why it always, yes, they're in utter chaos right now, right? But once they name their heir, you are going to see them lockstep in a second. And that's what always drives me
Well,
crazy about Republicans. We don't know how to win
yeah.
things. We don't know how to keep the lead.
Well, I'm not saying anything positive about Republicans, but I will say that Democrats do have a pretty predictable recent pattern. And again, I'm not saying they're not dangerous, and I'm not saying that they're not going to like coalesce behind somebody. But like, listen, with Obama, they basically won on charisma and not substance. Like, let's be
No,
fair,
yeah,
okay?
yeah, not
They
at all.
on Kamala Harris, they ran on charisma and not substance, and they lost. Okay.
Because she has none.
Well, I like yes, but also to put a point on it is that it's not like some other candidate would have. And
So
that's like really the problem with Donald Trump. Again, it comes back to his platform is much more popular than he is. And so what that puts them in a situation is that voters don't trust them right now in general, the Democrats. And they're losing on the issue on almost every issue. And that's bad for Democrats. They have a brand disadvantage for probably like a first time. And it's
yeah,
because of Biden and what they did. And so you can see there's a vacuum because they don't understand Twitter. They can't control it anymore. And what you would have expected is that after the loss, you would have seen their sort of like gray hairs, like Schumer, come out and fill the vacuum. And Schumer tried to, and the Democrats themselves want him to resign and like burn him in effigy. And
yeah,
if he posts anything on Twitter, it gets brutally ratioed. And so the
yep.
guys like disappeared. Like, and I think a lot of them have. And so anybody who has establishment power in the Democrat Party is like, hey, not the right time to stick my head above the trench.
Yeah.
And so it's left this void where all of their crazy loudest voices are all shouting to try and essentially build clout. And what it's gonna turn into the same circular firing squad that Democrats always have. And so you got your Gavin Newsoms, you got your AOCs, you got your Bernies, you got your Jasmine Crockett's. All these people are going to just try and be loud as possible and as crazy as possible to build clout. No, that's the thing. None of these are majority opinions.
No.
Like Jasmine Crockett is not going to win the presidency telling people to hit Republicans with a chair. It's not going to
So
happen.
what about a
But
guy like John Fetterman, who, even though his voting record is incredibly left in the Senate, even is come back and become insanely sane in a lot of ways, and is optically doing a really good job of being simpatico
yeah,
with President Trump.
no,
And
I'll get to that. No, I agree
okay, go for it.
100%. So it's a vacuum, and I think what should have happened is there should have been an introspective process where the Democrats realized that we've lost everybody because things suck now, and what they need is they don't have the authority to challenge Trump's America First platform. Trump's got the platform and he's got the authority. Okay, they're not going to win, in my opinion, unless they do a higher level of cheating or Republicans shoot themselves in the foot, unless they can also get a good platform and the authority. And they are not doing the right things to gain that. So that's why I think they're in a problem. We all know what's going to happen is they're all going to snipe at each other and undermine each other. And then at some point, the establishment's going to make their pick, and
Mhm.
that person's going to be anointed. Everybody is going to turn on a dime and support that
The
person.
super delegates decide everything in the Democrat Party anyway,
Yeah.
because we saw that with Bernie, right? Bernie was their pick. He was the people's pick of the Democrat Party, and the super delegates said, we're picking Hillary. Sorry, Bernie.
And so they're all going to pile behind some person we have no idea who it is, and that person's going to do well. But I think it's going to be a dotted line from Kamala Harris, which is like it's going to be all charisma, no substance, because they haven't gone through the process to figure out a new direction. And they might win because Republicans suck,
Yeah, we're
but
miserable.
but that that
Could
like
be
that's the
okay.
problem, and I don't think
Yeah.
that they're fixing their issue. Now, you asked about
Quickly, Nate
like
G throwing out Jon
Fetterman.
Stewart, saying I hear a lot of Jon Stewart too, which I don't think Jon Stewart has a rhino's chance in hell
No,
to
we
come
pulled
anywhere
this.
near.
So Pablo Torre came to me and put us into the field to poll on Stephen A. Smith. And Stephen A. Smith, in my opinion, is a good analog for Fetterman. He doesn't have the political experience, but people don't really know what he stands for. He's a bit of an enigma. He can believably say, well, I'm fiscally conservative and socially liberal, and that's the magic words, right? And Stephen A. Smith pulled the 34 against Vance's 38 in the 2028 matchup.
I
So,
like
and this
Stephen A. I've been a sports fan forever. I like Stephen A's radio show. I've listened to it plenty.
Well, that's one of the themes where we found that
Yeah, yeah,
Republicans had a high favorability rating of them.
yeah.
But what's going to happen is that the second he comes out with his stance on Second Amendment, everybody's going to run for the hills, right?
Yep.
And so my point is that a outsider who's not encumbered by the Democrat baggage and who has a nebulous platform does very well against non-Trump Republicans.
Okay.
And believe it or not, in a primary, only trailed Kamala Harris by 20 points and only trailed Newsom and AOC by 3.
That's wild.
So he's a contender
Yeah.
without, and here's the wild thing. He only had 47% of people were not sure in his favorability question. And so people don't even know who he is.
Yeah.
And they're like,
no,
oh
it's
yeah,
crazy.
he'll be great. Let's run that guy. So like what's going to happen though is that the Democrats will reject any outsider like a virus because they can't face accountability. So they're going to do the RFK tactic and just utterly try to destroy anyone who runs, and that will include Fetterman. Fetterman's an outsider. They're going to just like rip him apart. So it's disarray and chaos, but the people aren't sold on JD Vance yet. I can tell you that right now.
I'll tell you this: JD Vance isn't going to be the candidate. I can promise you that there needs to be a lot of work because the thing is, there are other people in the Republicans. I really think Marco Rubio has the inroad. And I've been saying he was a dark horse for a little while, and Trump all but confirmed that he thinks Marco would be a good president. In one of his more recent comments, saying that he believes that two people that could take his place in 2028 is Vance and Rubio. And the difference is, and I've said this a few times on the show, Vance is one of the most active VPs we've ever had. He's doing a fantastic job, but he can make no decisions. He has no power whatsoever as a VP. Where Marco Rubio is actually going and achieving things as a Secretary of State. He is the second most powerful individual in the world right now as a Secretary of State. And he has flawlessly pushed Trump's agenda around the world. And it hasn't even been a question. We haven't even heard a peep about him questioning loyalty or any uniparty getting in there. So with his bridge of the uniparty plus MAGA, if he goes 4 years the way he's doing right now, Marco Rubio will cakewalk into that Republican candidacy. And here's the thing. If he does the job as Secretary of State these next 4 years, maybe he can be a pretty damn good president, right? Like, he maybe has actually turned a little bit of a leaf. So that's right now. I'm actually pushing Marco to the top of the slate. I don't know what the polls say about him.
Well, what I'm typing here is a note to myself. We haven't polled on Marco Rubio at all recently,
I
should.
Think he's the guy.
Well, so what's interesting is that you made a really strong statement that JD Vance is not going to be the candidate.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I've heard the same thing.
My thing is with Vance, he is a good speaker, and he did well on the debate against Waltz, because Waltz is a bumbling moron. But when you put him on stage against Marco, DeSantis, because DeSantis is going to run again, and DeSantis is a good candidate. I think DeSantis is fine if he gets good advice and they just let Ron DeSantis be Ron DeSantis. He'll be okay.
I'll hard disagree with you on that one, man. No.
I think he's fine if they just let him be himself. If they say, hey, Ron, treat every candidate like they're the media, he'll be okay because he will just not give a shit and just go and be. When Ron is just off the cuff, I think it's the
I
best
don't think
moments
he's
of him.
human enough. I think he would be a
It could be it.
great cabinet workhorse,
Yeah,
and unfortunately,
definitely.
he shot himself in the foot such that that was never. Listen, the $600 million was spent in the Republican primary just to make Donald Trump. That's probably more than any non-Trump campaign spending that went into
Probably.
the actual presidential cycle.
Yeah.
And that's revolting and disgusting. And almost all of it was because of him. And almost all of it was because people came to him and said, "Hey, you're the guy."
He shouldn't have
And
run.
I
Yeah.
can understand how that's like a really like positive thing, but it's like I think most people in the MAGA circle put in similar shoes would have been like, well, no, there's this really strong feeling of like, like this. I don't know what the right word is, but like Trump is due his recovery, like the hero's journey, essentially, right? But here's the thing: DeSantis spent $8 million on polling to WPA Intel. That's more than Rasmussen's earned on our top line in like 5 or 6 years. So
Jesus.
the amount of money that I could have told DeSantis for free that he had no shot. And I'll tell you the exact polling we did right after the 2022 election. We put a set into the field where we tested Trump and DeSantis favorability. Guess what? The numbers were like, for all intents and purposes, identical. Now, Trump's was lower than it normally is, but that's because he kind of sucked in 22. And
And he was out of the
everybody was,
spotlight.
yeah, well, they had just lost and he was like
Yeah,
launching
yeah.
NFTs and stuff like that. But then we asked the question, is the Republican Party the party of Donald Trump and the Make America Great Again movement? And like 80% of Republicans said yes.
Of course.
So
Yeah, yeah.
it's like, I get that number and I'm like, Ron, you can't run. Well, maybe he's going to get thrown in jail. You're going to destroy your political career on the off chance that they send Donald Trump to jail. And what is crazy is that I could see in real time his primary numbers just collapse. And what collapsed them was him running. Like he running collapsed his numbers. He was down, I think, something like, I'm pulling these numbers out of my butt. It was like 48-24 or something.
They're gonna quote you now. You're gonna get screwed. They're going all
Yeah.
the DeSimps are gonna come after you.
Yeah. He was down like, let's just say 20 points. Like
Yeah.
he was down roughly 20 points in, call it April of 21. And then he might have done a little better in like February of 22. And then he launched his campaign, and then it was like down 30 points, down
It
40
was such
points,
a
down 50
terrible
points,
launch.
down
That
60
launch
points.
on X was bad.
Well, you know what? Like part of it though is like even before his launch on X, his numbers were plunging, and it's because they convicted Donald Trump. Donald Trump went to East Palestine, like, and that's my point is that Donald Trump knows how to get out there, run a campaign, get people to trust him, and Ron DeSantis is like a robot, a stiff. But I was saying, like, what I heard about JD Vance. So my friend John Fawcett, the guy that took over for Lou Dobbs on the Great America Show,
Yep.
he said he heard from somebody, he wouldn't tell me who yet, but that JD Vance is not the guy. And to hear a statement like that, and again, like this is just hearsay, right? But to hear a statement like that, that's interesting because I would, in Trump's shoes, say, we'll give him time. We'll give him some challenges and try and grow into it. And so I just wonder, like, if there's a deal breaker there. Like, he's clearly just not tested enough. Like, you were right. Rubio is going to be racking up accomplishment bullets, and, JD Vance is going to be racking up. Like, he has good interview snippets, but he's also got some pretty crappy tweets, not going to lie.
Yeah, and I think I think that's part of his value though, because I think one of the values of JD Vance is he is a real guy, and Trump is letting his whole cabinet embrace their personalities and be who they are with Scott Bassett and everything like that. Like they're just all, Stephen Miller's awesome, but they're just doing what they do. Now, I don't think we can forget about Vivek Ramaswamy. If Vivek wins a public
I think
office,
I think
here's the thing. I think if he wins a public office before this time and he can go out there and get some policy stuff done, then I think because he's a good speaker. And
here's my problem with him. He had a very clear mask off moment. Was it a mistake? Was it the wrong words? Was it unfortunate? All yes, 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 right?
Mhm.
And yet my gut is that people perceived that to be a very critical mistake, like a very mask off moment. You showed us who you are. And I don't think MAGA is going to forget that.
I mean, it could, but then again, when we're floundering for a candidate 2028, you're going to see the war of the Republicans
Yeah.
from 2026 to
No, you're
2028.
right.
It is going to get raw. And the thing with DeSantis, just to jump back to him for 1 second, I almost don't blame him for running. And in a way, because if you want to be president, you need to have that moxie that you can win at all times. Even if it's realistically not there, you need to have there's a definite narcissism in wanting to be the most powerful person on the planet, right? You have to have some of that, which is why Donald Trump is so damn good about it. He won't hide the fact that Donald Trump loves him some Donald Trump, right? And so I almost don't blame DeSantis. He wanted it. He has that narcissism about him. It was the wrong time. He had terrible advice. Max Nordu and
Oh,
I forget
dude,
who the
I'm
hell the
I
chick
so
was, but
totally disagree with you on DeSantis. Now, like, okay, let me ask you. Okay, you're the guy. You're
yeah,
the governor of Florida.
yep,
Donald Trump's being indicted. The future is uncertain. There's
mhm,
very clear polling that shows that he's more like like people want him. He's gotten more votes than any Republican in history. But the Kochs come to you and the Club for Growth people, and they say, "Well,
yep.
we have a lot of money with your name on it." Okay,
Mhm.
what do you do?
I run, but here's how I run. I don't run the way he did. I don't run as against Donald Trump. I run as here, I'm Ron DeSantis. I am in line with MAGA. I am you guys, but I'm next. I'm not against Donald. I want to run a good campaign against him, but here I'm another option and present myself as the better option. What he did was align himself against Donald Trump. And with your polling, he aligned himself against the Republican Party, essentially. So that's where
Yeah,
he got the
this is
mistake. And
really
I forget
stupid.
who
Dude,
his
it was really
campaign chick
stupid.
was online. She fought with everyone, and you had people that were
Yeah.
just
Oh,
they were they were trying to be
all of the
edgy and they were
influencers.
bad about it. And the thing is, where he floundered was he had an awful campaign. I don't think he was going to beat Trump at all, but I think he could have left with grace. And I think he could have ran a good campaign against him that wasn't against the movement. And it would have just been, I'm your other MAGA option. Like you said, the MAGA movement's bigger than Trump. So setting himself up for 2028 to be like, hey, listen, and here's the thing: if I'm Ron DeSantis, I'm on the phone with Trump every day because I'm letting him remember I'm there. Because when I'm out as governor, when I'm done as governor,
Dude,
and I'm out in 2026, I want to lead Doge. If I'm Ron DeSantis and put
okay,
myself out to the world,
Alex, you answered the question exactly right. Okay, and you went
I would have been a
exactly
better
where I wanted
candidate.
you to. Okay, well, so here's the thing. You're right. He should have been talking to Trump. He should have been shown having lunch with him. I don't
Yeah,
think they like each other. I think that's a problem.
but that's
Um,
politics. You've got to like each other, but Trump doesn't play
yeah,
politics the same way, so it's a little different there.
yeah, you got to kowtow, and
Yeah, a little
maybe
bit.
the knee was a little too stiff to use Game of Thrones parlance. But okay, yeah, you're right. I think the only way to have done that correctly is something along the lines, like you said, of listen, Trump built this movement, and it's the right movement, and I support it 100%, and I support Trump. But we don't know what's going to happen, and I'm going
The
to
future is
run, and I
unclear.
like Trump, and I will defer to him if but
If
I'm
I
here
lose, then
because
I'm on his side. Yeah,
yeah, but I'm here because I'm a capo. I'm a foot soldier. I'm part of this movement, right? And here's why that wouldn't have worked. The money that backed him did not want him to bow out. They
hundred
wanted a
percent.
return on investment. That's why.
100%.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah. Listen,
It's all the money.
that was the end
And
game.
Donald and DeSantis said, "Okay, I will give you your return on investment." Like that's the problem.
And then they all moved right to Nikki Haley. Once they saw DeSantis was out,
Yeah.
that all that same money went over to Nikki. And
Oh my.
that's
Well, well, then the Democrat money too. Like we
yeah.
were,
Oh my
I
God.
mean, geez, I just pulled Colorado not that long ago, and it's like they got 30% of Democrats like voting in the Republican primary now because of Haley. It's like
It's
crazy how much has
insane.
changed.
It's absolutely wild. So there's so much going on. I would love to have you back on obviously a few times before this, but definitely post 2026, post the midterms, and then maybe a few times as we're going on there, just to, and we can
Yeah.
adjust. You don't have to come on Wednesdays. We can adjust to Thursday or Tuesday for you to make it better for you. But to have you on to kind of get a pulse a little bit of how that red meat is being thrown into the water of both the Democrats and the Republicans, because honestly, that is my favorite freaking time of politics. Post midterms, president, and then now both sides. That was some of the most entertaining. We got Trump because both primaries were going on and they were both just going to battle. There were like 16 candidates on each side, and it was so much freaking fun. So, like,
Yeah.
that for me as a political junkie truly enjoys. So, before we jump out of here, I want to ask you, what current anime or manga are you watching or reading?
Yeah, I wanted to get to the culture war. I think it's important. I think Breitbart was right. Politics is downstream from culture, and I think the only reason that Trump won is because a culture war was won back in 21, 22, 23 because they pushed too far. And it all started. I was like tweeting about this a lot today. I was thinking about the culture war. I think it started with like Glee, basically, right? It's like this idea of everybody is like
Yeah.
a misfit. Everybody like we should worship victims and stuff like that. It really like got people out of their shells. I think it led to downstream stuff like Gamergate. I think it put us in a situation where major corporations hired these people into Western writing rooms, and now they
Yeah.
ruined and poisoned all of our entertainment. And so, like, this is a really big thing, and we've pulled a lot on entertainment to try and understand this stuff. And it's crazy what's happening. Like, Donald Trump has a higher favorability rating than Disney. That's just
Honestly,
incredible.
I feel like the culture war really ramped up under Obama when he started
Yeah.
making the white versus black people thing, when he started making cops versus black people as a big, it was basically what he started with, backing, just right away making knee jerk announcements on the bully pulpit and making cops look bad. And I feel like that's when the culture war really ramped up because they gave the leftists a wedge topic that they've been trying to get forever since Rodney King and stuff
Yeah.
like that. They were getting that wedge topic. And once they got it with the president, boom, it exploded. And then all the critical theories started to come out and they all
Well, like,
started to
yeah.
one by one.
The zeitgeist was like reality shows and MySpace and stuff. And then all of a sudden, overnight, it became iPhone, Facebook, Glee,
Hmm.
and Obama. And remember, Obama, it was like, oh, we appealed to the younger generation on social media. And
Yep.
then within a year, the staff of the Glee was at the White House. And it's like,
Crazy.
then all of the media is like, oh, this woke stuff's great. We're going to pile into it. And the
Yep.
pride stuff started to happen. And it took a long time. But what happened, I think, in 21, 22, is that they pushed too far. And it was like a 1-2 punch with all the impression of the Biden administration shutting down businesses and forcing people through all this ridiculous stuff. And it's great. But like the marvel of Trump is that most humans in America identify as Christian, are
Hmm.
fundamentally agreeable, want to be socially cohesive. But you have to be a disagreeable person to support Donald Trump.
Yeah.
You want
100%.
people kicked out of your country. You want people hung. You have to be disagreeable. And the fact that now a majority of this country is really, really incredible. And that puts us in a very, very, very. You asked about manga. So I'm very discerning with my consumption of stuff. I like people that put their art first. And unfortunately, it's hard to find that in Western circles nowadays. My favorite book series is Wheel of Time, and Amazon just took a steaming dump all over that.
Well, my favorite book
Um,
series is Lord of the Rings, and Rings of Power doesn't exist. That is not a real thing.
yeah. Have you tried Wheel of Time yet?
I need to read it. It's on my list of things to read. I need to because I've heard so many good things about Wheels of Time. But I will say,
Yeah.
I would love for you go. Have you checked out the Rippaverse and what Eric July is doing over in the Rippaverse right now?
I've been on a stream with him. I'm not a huge comic guy. I've read some stuff. I went back and read a run of like Guardians of the Galaxy. I've read, you know what I like? What I read most recently, Western comics. I was reading a decent amount of like, Watchmen, V for Vendetta, and
Really good. Yeah.
really recently is The Boys.
The
And
boys, the boys comic is fantastic. The show is
Yeah.
like a shill of what The Boys is, the comic.
The show is indistinct,
Trash.
like crap.
Yeah, yeah.
What I think the comic book series is about is basically political power and how it corrupts people. I think that's
Yep.
like really has a lot of stuff there, and so it's very relevant considering it was written, I don't know what, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But then I'm a big One Piece guy because here's the thing. Well, are you watching or reading?
I'm reading. I'm more of a
Good.
manga first guy.
Yeah, the anime wastes your time, and
Well, they're redoing it without all the filler, which is nice. Netflix and Oda, they're working together to redo the whole anime and just kind of do like a Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, where it was just faithful to the manga, and that's what they're going to do.
I haven't watched that. My issue with the anime isn't the filler; it's the pacing.
Yes, different.
You know, where it's like two different characters just stare back and forth at each other for like 3 minutes, and then there's one.
Be nice to Dragon Ball, okay? Be nice to Dragon Ball. They're the ones that
No,
did
the
that
One
more.
Piece anime is like that, dude.
No,
like,
I know, but Dragon Ball is the worst with that. And I'm a Dragon Ball guy through and through, but it's the worst.
Well, if you appreciate, here's what I'm going to say: if you appreciate the One Piece manga, you will like Wheel of Time. It is a slow burn. It is quirky. It's a slow burn, but it has very strong themes like One Piece does. And what's really cool and relevant and what Amazon destroyed is that the core theme of Wheel of Time, very relevant right now. It's the idea that men and women are very fundamentally unique and have inherent traits that are in conflict, but they can overcome those to work together and complement each other. That's like the fundamental core. And you can tell that like a gay showrunner is not going to run with that, right? Like,
how dare they have a binary as their core? How dare they?
Yeah. Oh, man.
I mean, so I will recommend Rippaverse. They just did that with Ripper Send Yellow Flash, who's a personality on YouTube. He just put out.
I've been on his show.
Oh, you've been with Yellow Flash?
So no, I'm in the YouTube Entertainment Club, man. I go on Valiant Renegade. I've been on WW Pro. I was on Geeks and Gamers.
So you got to get the Golden Patriot, because Yellow Flash is a big anime manga fan. He just finished his comic, and it's basically like it's called the Golden Patriot. He's a World War II pilot, and he gets ejected and he gets a power and he basically becomes a fucking Power Ranger. It's amazing.
No, I saw him pitching it. I'll have to. Oh wait, is it out yet?
It's not out. You can pre-order it, but you can pre-order it through the Ripper Send.
Nice. Yeah.
No, I love that you're all with the G&G guys. Like we've had a bunch of the G&G guys on. We've had Drunk 3PO, Epic Mike, a bunch of those guys on here.
Yeah, there's a lot of bleed over between politics. I went on some guy's show, who's great, Tony Schaffer. Do you know him?
I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, he was one of the big ones about sort of like leaking stuff about, well, he was involved in the whole 9/11 thing, right? And that if you're interested, what's the guy's name? Kurt Weldon, who was just on with Tucker Carlson, good interview to watch. But I was just on with Tony Schaffer. I really should know, is it Schaefer or Schaffer?
I think it's Schaffer.
It's Schaefer. It's probably
Schaefer.
But
it's 50-50.
It's hard to. I go on a show, then I meet him. I like him. We had beers down at CPAC, and we were talking about going on. We were going on the entertainment shows. He's like, "Oh yeah, I've been on Doomcock's show like a bunch of times."
That's awesome.
He used to be a regular, and it's like this is like a former military intel Black Ops guy, and he's going on like Doomcock.
I love all G&G Friday Night Tights. I listen to Side Scrollers every day. Stuttering Craig's been on a few times. Like it's like it is. What's so nice about that group is, yeah, they all generally lean right, but they all just want to have good fucking entertainment. I think that's what we're all looking for, right? And
you say I mean right, but it's just they're men, dude.
But even the women on there, even the women on there, they kind of. Well, Chrissy Mayer's freaking hilarious, but I
haven't been on with her yet. But like like I was in the Boy Scouts in the 80s or 90s, and it's like my scout troop was like leaders were like strong role models, very disagreeable human beings, would teach you the right way to go, and also probably mucked around in Nam. You know what I mean? It's like real people. Yeah. And now we've completely lost that. There's this whole, like, that's toxic now. And it's like, no, like people got pissed off and the pendulum swung back, and hopefully we recapture that part of our culture for sure.
So I feel like you'll enjoy this because my day job is I'm a driving instructor. So I teach people how to drive. And I have a ton of like 16-year-olds in my car, right? So whenever anyone and like I'm with these individuals for hours on end. And so like I'll get someone like these 16, 17, 18-year-old girls and like they'll tell me something about like, oh, guys, this and that. And I'm like, hey, I cut these guys a break in this generation because the guys that they're dealing with right now were raised and told not to be
Yeah.
masculine. And they were raised and told that if they try hard for a girl, they're creeps. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, they were told not to be masculine, and you girls just put their text on freaking online and embarrass them if they try hard. So I'm doing my part one kid at a time to try and be like, hey, encourage guys to be more masculine and tell girls to stop being so freaking mean to guys that try.
Yeah.
Like it's a
That, and
shitty
there's
time to
like
be a
nearly
guy.
a 1 in 10 chance that each one of those girls is going to be on OnlyFans within a year or
Ugh,
two. It's kind of sad.
it's
And here's the
terrible.
other thing, they medicate the boys, right? If they exhibit too much of the wrong stuff, it is really a perverse culture.
Which
And
is
we have
something
failed the
going
children.
around. Jonathan Haidt has The Anxious Generation has been recommended to so many schools, and I read it twice. School systems are putting it in practice, and I will say that is encouraging. Much more free play, much more getting up, a lot less of a sit down structured thing, and it will help guys around the nation so much as this spreads.
Oh man. Oh, what? This is a good conversation. We're going all over the place. My wife's an educator, and we've thought a lot about this because in the last 5 years, I've been homeschooling my kids. There's a
Nice.
great book called Free to Learn. Guy's name's Peter Gray is the
Mhm.
author, and it's about the Sudbury schools and essentially how it's like, well, like schools are designed to be little people prisons where they put
Create
people
factory
into.
workers.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But like these equal age cohorts that are large and poorly supervised
Mhm.
are the ways that you develop bullying issues. And you essentially, what you need is not only the play, but then the mixed age interaction where the older kids are responsible
Yeah.
for the younger ones, where the younger ones look up to the bigger ones and learn things, and then they learn at their own pace. Because I think, like, I don't think there should be teachers. Why do you have to learn algebra from probably like the lower fifth percentile of all teachers of algebra in the history of the US when you could look on YouTube and get what you need immediately and then teach yourself? It's
And they
like,
also all used to be nuns. Religion in this country first started off as a religious group. The nuns would teach the kids in town. They all got together and they were the ones they did Sunday school, but they also educated because a lot of, especially back
yeah.
in the day, a lot of your religious were the learned. So they were your doctors, they were your nuns. They did a lot of things in the community. And that's initially how this all started. So you would like this too. A few weeks ago, I had Lenore Skenazy on, and she wrote Free Range Kids, which is a book I think you would love. Free Range Kids is a great
I
book,
heard of it. I
and
haven't read it. Yeah.
yeah, Lenore's awesome, and she partners with Jonathan Haidt from the Anxious Generation to do this organization called Let Grow, where again it goes into schools and it encourages parents and kids to work together to allow the kids to do more. So whatever your threshold as a parent is, like say you don't let your kid go play outside on their own, you will now go let your kid play outside on their own and trust them to go do things. Or if there's a safe
Oh,
and
man.
accessible corner store down the road, trust your child to go walk, get bread from the corner store, and come home without tracking them. And it's basically raising that threshold of letting kids go and be kids again, and that a 7, 8, 9 year old is so much more capable than we allow them to be. So that's it's you would like if
Yeah, you don't
you
have a
would love to
7, 8,
talk.
or 9-year-old, though, do you? You know,
I,
we got
I
the
have a
GPS
7-year-old.
trackers.
I have a 7 and a 4 year
Oh,
old. Okay.
nice. Okay. Nice.
So
Yeah,
you
I'm trying my best. I got my kids learning the longbow,
yeah, nice.
because of our cultural heritage. And
Love it.
like we try, but it is tough. Like
It is
part of
so
it
tough.
is just society is utterly insane. Um, but yeah, like you're right. It's like the single schoolhouse with mixed age with one person teaching who's also religious.
Mhm.
And then like the missing piece there, like I think the triumvirate is that like this whole idea of like Western logos, classical literature and education, this the dialectic, right? Essentially,
Yep.
and people don't talk about that, but if I could put my finger on what's changed about our news consumption in the public discourse, is that we have recaptured the dialectic with Twitter. just in the last,
Yeah.
it took some time, but just in the last 6 or 8 months, I think I'm talking on Twitter, and I feel like I'm exchanging information with people and learning and growing and coming to some mutual understanding of reality. Where else is that rewarded, like sought?
Well,
It's
we're
certainly
getting
not at
back to more
colleges.
of the Socratic style, right? The Socratic
Yeah,
dialectic and not the Hegelian, where the Hegelian is much more in the Marxist, conflict theory style, and this is a different of exchange of ideas, a Socratic
yeah.
one. So,
Well, I use the word dialect, and I'm not a classical historian, but my understanding is that, like, essentially Plato founded the academy, the first university, and it
mhm,
wasn't about credentialism, it wasn't about earning a degree. In fact, all of their learning literally just came from discussion, and the whole
yep,
idea was just to use logic. And it's like,
yep.
hey, this is what I think, and I'm going to, in good faith, exchange information to understand what you think. But if you say something that's logically incorrect, I'll correct you and then ask a question. And that has been lost. Like, that does not exist in American culture, period, at all. Like, until I think about it, you go to an echo chamber because you got censored somewhere.
Mhm.
Like, are you really having a discussion?
No,
Like, probably not. Facebook's not a discussion. College classrooms really aren't anymore. I mean,
college
I went
classrooms are
to an
terrible.
MBA school that had the Socratic method, and there was really no discussion there. Like, it's just nowhere. They're not teaching it in K-12. I can tell you that.
No, and that's it also comes with a sense of community, and that's something I'm trying to change in mine. We believe towns are safe now because nobody goes outside. Where back when I was younger, a safe town was I would walk down the road to my friend's house and we'd play football in the street all day.
Yeah,
And I live in a quote unquote safe area, and I drive by, and I'm not honking at kids to get the hell out of my way. And for me, that's a problem, right?
yeah.
You
Well,
want
and then
that
there's
in
that
your
lady
community.
looking out the window and watching you, and if you did something wrong, she'd call your mom. You know what I mean? Like, there was always
Yeah.
that.
Yes, and
But
you
that's
trusted the adults around you.
yeah, exactly.
So before we
Man,
get out of here, I am going to go through a few more comments, and then
cool.
unfortunately, we're going to jump out of here. So Caveat Ty's coming in saying he's doing a comic with Strife Comics called Brave Noir World. I'm going to keep a lookout for that. Caveat. Let me know when that is out. We can promote it, and I'll definitely make sure I go get it. Um, Caveat saying he loved the One Piece live action. Mark, you had a different opinion.
No, I didn't. Like, it wasn't bad. It's just not like, if I was going to recommend them in order, it would be digital colored manga, black and white manga, then the anime, minus the filler, and then the One Piece live action. It just doesn't feel the most correct. That's all. It's not bad. It's good entertainment. They did
Then
as good as they could, probably.
Caveat Ty said, get on Criticless. Mark, I don't know if you're on Criticless. It is, we had Blaine Andrews on a few weeks ago. He's the founder of Criticless. What it is you go and you make an account, and you can go and basically it's the answer to Rotten Tomatoes for the people. We
Oh,
go and
nice.
we rate movies, we rate TV shows, and you can comment on those ratings and things like that. Criticless is really cool, and it has a really cool aesthetic. It's like an 80s aesthetic.
Yeah,
I
I just
highly
turned it, like, you could probably see the pink flashing off my face. It is
I
cool.
highly recommend getting on there. It's a cool spot.
Huh.
Nachi's saying they were raised and told all to have broccoli hair. Yes. Education is inherently feminine. With the way it is
Yeah.
done now,
Right.
absolutely. Absolutely. And he wants to know, has you or your wife read John Taylor Gatto?
Um, what? Let me look that up.
He was
It
an
looks like I got
award
homework.
He was an award-winning New York teacher that went on to rant about how terrible the education system is in New York and all the changes, and he's fantastic. Nate's recommended him a bunch of times
Yeah.
here. Nate's awesome.
I just don't think you're going to fix public education system. I think, like, what worked for me is that, like, on and off. The way the military educates people is that they have a predefined body of knowledge. It's
Mhm.
self-directed. You go through qualification process, and then you have the time off. You do something else. Like, I think it's like, if you had a Sudbury school, which is free, no classes, do whatever you want, interact with everybody, and then it's like, here's your qualification card. You got to get this done by the end of 8th grade. Have fun. And it's like, some of it's like, hey, go to a teacher and have them teach you this,
Yeah.
or some of it's like, do this project, but it's all self-directed, and you can use the internet and do whatever. That's probably, in my opinion, the right thing. Spend all your extra time learning a skill or doing whatever you want that's fun and playing with people.
Caveat ties jumping in saying our kids go to a classical school. So, and the thing is, there are all different ways to do it.
Yeah, that's
You
a
know,
totally other end of the spectrum and
yeah,
also a very great thing. It's
yeah.
like the classical, you're getting the right stuff. Yeah.
See, the thing is with me is I pay taxes for my public school, so I'm going to go to war to try and change my little public school. Like you can, and the thing is too, if there's enough people that think like you, and all it takes is 2%. If you have 2% to go and rally, you can take something over like a school board. No problem. You can go and win a town board. So you can affect change. It takes effort, it takes time, but it's worth it if you want to make your kids like. But there's so many different ways. You could homeschool, you can classical school, you could do the Montessori style because the Montessori really works well for some people. So there's a ton of different ways. But Mark, this has been a ton of freaking fun, man,
Yeah.
and I
Stuff.
really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, this was great, man. Good conversation. Like we got into the weeds and polling
Oh yeah,
and talked about entertainment. I love it. And
absolutely.
education.
A little bit of
Yeah,
everything.
big
So
topics.
once again, he is Mark Mitchell. He's a head pollster over at Rasmussen Reports. If you would like to, please jump over and go to the Rasmussen Reports website. Where's my background? What's going on here? Thank you. Come on. What's going on? I'm not professional. But go over to the Rasmussen Reports website. You could see over here 48% blame Trump for dividing America. How could you, a right wing poll, put this, Mark?
What's
Anyway,
it? Well, 48% blame the Democrats and the media. So it's
there you
like,
go.
yeah,
So
I
we're
mean, that's
going.
what the numbers were.
So, but if you scroll down, you can get all the polls, you can get all the articles and things on here. Go log in, sign up, subscribe right there. You only see $4.95 a month. So honestly, it's less than that cup of Starbucks that you get every single day before a month to go and get one of the best pollsters. And also, you will now support, if you like what Mark was saying, you'll go and you'll support Mark, you'll support Rasmussen, you go and do the work, be able to pay for the polls, have more pollsters on the ground. So absolutely go over here. I love that picture that you have of Biden looking incredibly goofy. That is fantastic. But
Yeah.
but definitely everyone go over here and sign up for that. Wherever you're watching this from, we appreciate it. I love all the numbers that we have watching here. Everyone watching on X, we appreciate you all over there. Everyone on YouTube, Facebook, Kick, Rumble, thank you all. If you're listening to this later via podcast form, everyone make sure you like, share, follow, subscribe, give a good rating, and spread this word of mouth. Greatest podcast in the freaking world is right here, damn it. But anyway,